The first type of PhD supervisor is the micromanager. Now, I've had a number of these throughout the course of my time in academia, and this micromanager type of supervisor is most likely to say, so, what are you up to today? And also, maybe we should have a meeting about that before we decide on what we should be doing. Lots of we's. They struggle to let go of the research that they've grown up. And this researcher actually falls asleep a lot. Now, the micromanagers that have been in my life are generally work to the bone. They are kind of perfectionists, and they expect the same level of perfection from you and the same level of commitment to the research as they are giving to the university. So they end up doing loads of admin stuff. They are yes people. They end up taking on far too much than they can actually manage throughout the day, and they expect you to do the same and fit in to whatever sort of like things they are doing as well. So micromanagers always want to know what you're doing, and the best way to sort of like deal with a micromanager that I've found in the past is to set really hard boundaries, is to say, okay, I'm going to go away for a week. So i.e. don't bother me for a whole week, and then I'll come back and report to you. Setting those boundaries just mean there's a nice expectation about what they can give you, what you're going to give them, and importantly, the timeline they can leave you alone. Another thing, once I started to get into my postdoc and a little bit further into my research, I was able to just withhold a little bit of information so that I could get on with the stuff I was doing and then report back later. Withholding information in the early stage is not a good idea, but if you have a supervisor who just won't leave you alone, less information, I think, is more sort of powerful in keeping them away, keeping them a little bit distant so you can actually focus on doing what you need to do, which is get your research done. This video is brought to you by my ebooks. Go check it out at academiainsider.com. I've got two at the moment, the PhD Survival Guide and the Ultimate Academic Writing Toolkit. They are for a bundle price at the moment, so go check it out. And also, if you haven't already, sign up to my newsletter where you'll get 5 emails initially over about 2 weeks. Everything from the tools I use, how to write the perfect abstract, and more. Exclusive content available for free, so go sign up to that newsletter. It's in the link as well. Description, link as well. You know what I'm saying. Everyone says it on YouTube. Another type of supervisor that I've had is the ghost supervisor. They kind of turn up occasionally. Now, this was when I had like 5 or more supervisors on a project, and the ghost supervisor would be one that would like spookily turn up to random meetings and you kind of forgot a little bit that they were on your research panel or your supervisor committee, and then every so often they would sort of like say, oh, send me the draft of that paper or send me the draft of your thesis, and they would always take ages to get back to you, and then the only thing they would say is, okay, great, looks great to me, and it was never great. Then you'd send it to someone else and they'd find all of these issues. They are looking to do the minimum amount of work possible but gain the maximum. And to be honest with you, they're probably playing the academic game properly. They're focusing on getting money for the university, doing the stuff that gets some high profile things. You are at the lower end of their priorities, and so it's easier to ghost you than to invest time because they are busy doing other things. A couple of ghost researchers that I've been under, actually I've like walked in a couple of times and they've been asleep in their chair, one of them, and another one had brought in like a long sofa into his office, and I walked in, went, oh, excuse me, and he was just asleep, and he was like, oh, sorry, oh, I'm just very tired. I'm like, do whatever you want in your office, man, no worries, but just, can you respond to my emails occasionally? Ghost supervisor. The best way to deal with this sort of supervisor is hassling them, and if they are your primary supervisor, is the most annoying thing. So you do have to sort of like take a co-supervisor researcher on board to your project, because otherwise you'll just be high and dry, left alone for ages, not making progress. So do not ever end up with a ghost supervisor as your primary research supervisor, or get in a co-supervisor to support the spooky disappearances. The slave driver is another type of academic supervisor, and this is where the horror stories come from. These people expect you to be in the lab maybe 7 days a week, in the office all the time, available, driving you hard, putting you on projects, teaming you up, collaborating with you, asking for results, pushing you to your limits, asking for quick turnarounds, and that's because that is what they expect of themselves. Deep down in these people, they are absolutely terrified of losing their identity as a researcher, as an academic, and the only way they can hold on to it is by outperforming everyone else, and they expect you to do the same. It's an ego thing as well, where, they've reached a certain level of success and they need to keep it going. The only way to do that is to work you harder. They'll be saying things along the lines of, I expect you to be in the lab 7 days a week. I expect for this to come back to me on my desk, have it by the end of the day, that sort of stuff. Now, dealing with this sort of supervisor is really tough because they are kind of a bit aggressive about the way they push you, and they've created a culture of competition within the lab, and it can be very hard to break through it. One technique that I maybe don't suggest for everyone is to stand up for yourself. I did it a couple of times, and they would always sheepishly turn up to my office a little bit later and be like, never apologize, but just be super nice to me as an apology. So that's one way. I remember saying once to a supervisor, you don't speak to me like this. I'm not a member of your family. I'm not someone that you can just boss around. This is an employment situation, and you need to speak to me professionally and with respect. And on that note, this meeting is over. I'm out of here. And they very sheepishly sort of turned up to my office door, and I could tell they were nervous because while they were speaking to me, they were practicing their golf swings. So yes, that's one way of dealing with it. Another sort of slave driver is to kind of just move away from the culture. They have developed this highly toxic culture within their lab or their research environment, and really the only thing to do is get out as quick as you can if you notice that this slave driver, if you're super ambitious and this really works for you and this motivates you, great. I'm not that sort of person. I just want to push back against authority. So it wouldn't work for me. I would have to get out there as soon as possible. I need to sort of have respect for the person I'm working under, and maybe it'll work for you. Great. If not, time to leave. That's the only way to deal with a slave driver. Now, this is my favorite type of academic. It wasn't my favorite initially, but I love a boaster. I have seen these sort of academics. They waltz in to the tea room and they're like, oh, by the way, did you notice I got nominated for this award? Or they'll say stuff like, well, that's another paper in Nature Materials or whatever it is. And they will always inflate. They'll always find the most sort of generous angle to view their accomplishments, and they'll happily tell you about it. Now, in the past, this annoyed me. I would always be like, oh, did you hear that person say these things? But I've come to love it. I've come to realize that it's not anything about me. It's all about them. And I enjoy the show. And do you know what? Sometimes this person really is great to speak to because it shows that they have sort of a certain pride or passion around their research. And to be honest with you, a lot of these people are generally quite successful, but they'll happily tell you about the success, and that is the annoying thing. So they are great to collaborate with, they're great to work under. Quite often, they're enthusiastic about your successes. I've seen these boasting researchers kind of talk about their PhD students as if they are the bomb. And these PhD students are great that work under them, but oh my God, it would be like they have just solved the world's biggest problem, and they are, they're boasting about their PhD students' achievement, and it's kind of cute, it's kind of lovely. So yes, the boaster, I've seen it all the time, and the way you deal with this is generally they're lovely people at heart. They just want to let you know how great they are, and listen, smile and nod. And that is the way to get around a boaster. I kind of like it. Okay, these two I've lumped together, the rich supervisor and the poor supervisor. A rich supervisor has just got a massive grant, and they're saying things like, sure, just, spend money on that. Or have we got that bit of equipment? Maybe you should buy it. This sort of researcher can very quickly become the poor researcher, and they swap between these two kind of like extremes all the time. So when they initially get a grant, oh, it's shower time. They normally have like a limit on when they need to spend the money. It is great. Oh, it is an absolute feast for everyone involved. It's so good. I ended up with these really expensive bits of equipment that I only ever used once or twice, but they didn't care. They love it. It's all about spending that money, making the grant look like it was put to good use. That's it. And then they can quickly become the sort of researcher that says, oh, that looks pretty expensive actually. Can we get another couple of quotes on that? Or like, how much does it cost to do the thing? That is the reality of research. It is a fast or famine, famine or feast. That's it. Famine or feast kind of environment, and your supervisor will bounce between the two. There's not much you can do other than with more mature researchers, they tend to get more consistent grants. And that's because they apply for more grants. They have more collaborations with people who are also applying for grants. And that kind of like just creates this buffer zone of money that they can sort of like rest on if some things don't work out. It's all about a numbers game for them. They know that they'll get about 10 to 20% of their grant applications approved. So they keep pumping them out. And that is the only way to kind of assure long-term success in academia, especially as you get further up. Collaborations go a long way, but newer researchers, younger researchers, they tend to be on the poorer side because they haven't built up that network, that buffer of money yet. And they are the sort of people that will be like, by the way, we should be cutting costs here and here. And I'm not sure that amount of grant money was actually assigned to that. So we should think about it again. Dealing with these sort of people, you just have to sort of like be on their side, find budget options for them. And I think, that's the only way to deal. And very quickly, they can go from poor to rich. And also, I've seen the other way, rich to poor. A supportive supervisor is the absolute best. I've seen probably 2 really good supportive supervisors during my time in academia, and these people are just gems. It is great to work under them. They may not be the most ambitious, the most published, they might not even have the most money, but they are supportive. And I've seen one supervisor in particular who always looked at opportunities for his PhD students and postdocs. So if something came across his desk that he couldn't do, he would say, how about this may suit your sort of career projection. They were always interested in making sure that you grew the way you wanted to. It was fantastic. And when they knew that I wanted to go into science communication, they looked at opportunities for me to communicate what was going on in the research, or gave me opportunities to speak and that sort of stuff. And it was so great. And they measure their success not by what they achieve, but also by what their team achieves. And I think that's really sort of like a really admirable thing to be able to do in academia when it's just so competitive. So supportive supervisors are easy to work under. You're not going to end up necessarily, being the top dog of the university, but that's not what they're there for. They're about making you grow in the ways you want to grow, and that is so great. They acknowledge the team over the individual, which is what research is all about. Very rarely these days is it about a single person's effort to get results. It is actually about a team's effort, and they always acknowledge it, and I just like that. So yes, find one of them if you can, put them on your team. So clearly I have looked at a number of different aspects of a PhD research supervisor, and your PhD supervisor may be a culmination of all of these things or just a few of them. Let me know in the comments what your PhD supervisor is like. What's their personality type? Is there any I've missed? Let me know in the comments. And also go check out academiainsider.com. That's where I've got my 2 ebooks where you can purchase them for a bundle price, and I'll see you in the next video.